Hello, good afternoon. We're carrying on with these gears again today. Back on the Wallace. So those of you that have been following along know that at the minute we are working on these gears. These are on our traction engine, Little Lauren, and we're currently restoring and replacing our running gear, which include these, which are her change gears. So we cut these on a Sunderland number 19 gear shaper. So today's job, we're carrying on and we're going to be making the mating gear, which runs on these, which goes on the end of the crank, as you can see, just up there somewhere. So we're going to crack on with that. If you watched last week's video, you know we made up a blank. So I'll show you how we got on. So if you watched last week's video, you'll recognise this. This is what I was going to use as a test blank to basically gauge how much backlash we need in our gear train. And as you can see, it was a catastrophic, blatant failure. This just wasn't a good idea from the start, really. So being it is made out of thin plate and not fixed together, we was just pushing this end plate out and it was just going to be a mess. So we ended up ditching that, and I ended up making up another blank, but just one solid piece. So I machined up one big giant solid chunk that we could take out the road in test cut. So we ended up doing that. We made a new blank and I ended up taking it out to JW's, and here's how that went. And this is what we ended up with. This is our test piece, or test gear. As you can see, I've bored it out so that it'll slip over the top of the crank without having to cut the splines. It's just the quickest way to do that. So if we take this up to the crank now, we'll fit it on, and hopefully it will mesh with very little backlash. So let's take it up, put it on the crank, and see. So the crank splines have already been machined. I've done all that before I started YouTube. So these have all been welded up, remachined, so that they're nice square again. The only thing I didn't do was touch the outer diameter of this crank end. So that's still got a bit of wear in, but I've made it so as tight as I can possibly get it. So that should just slip nicely over the end of the crank. But obviously where the gear's been riding, you can see there's a little bit more wear. So this one is going to go and mesh hopefully with that gear there. Right, I'm not going to bump it on any further than that because it's just going to make it difficult for me to get it off, but that should now hopefully have a minimal backlash. So there's our backlash. This is all going to change as the engine heats up. So we've got to put a little bit of backlash in it. So I'll go round to the other side, spin the crank, and hopefully it'll all go round. So there we go, I reckon that's going to work. It's nice and quiet. I think that is going to be what we need. So what I need to do now then is I need to take the big gear, the actual blank, which is this one's representing. I'm going to take that to JW's, stick it on the Sunderland, and then we'll cut the real thing. Exactly the same dimension as this. So let's go do that. Right, so we're back from that gear cutting exercise, and now as you can see we're back in the big lathe getting ready to bore it out to size, so in the future we can put the splines in. One thing you might be able to notice is this bit of overcut from the tough cutting. Bit of a mishap on my part really. being that the originals was cast, they didn't use a gear shaper to shape the teeth. It was just done as one piece. So that was fine for this diameter on the end to be bigger than the root diameter of the tooth. So all we've done is we've nibbled into it a little bit, which is no problem, because within about 10 minutes that's going to be sorted out. So I'll show you the original. So as you can see on the original, the root of the tooth is actually lower than this shroudy part, which is where the gear selector fits in. So if we was going to do it again, we could have cut our stroke off before we got into the meat of this, but it's really not going to matter for what we're doing. I could weld it up, but I don't think it's worth it. All this does is for your selector fork raising, which means you can, via the levers, so via this plate arrangement, this is what the gear rides in, and that's how you select your gears and stop them meshing together. So basically I've got one there. This is all it's going to do. It's asking to ride in the slot and keep you meshed, basically. So we got videos on making these. We made these for some solid plate. A video of that can be found on our channel. That's quite interesting. But first thing I got to do with this one now is just get rid of them apprentice marks and carry on with my day. So next up then is going to be to bore it out the size. This is a test ring I made up when we done the spline work. Just a ring we slotted. So what we want, this is basically a replica of what we want to put in the end of our part, is we want this bore, which is 95mm. So fair bit to remove out of this part. Let's keep on cracking on. So I'm going to take it nice and steady, just do 2mm at a time. We ain't got a very good grip on this part, so don't want to chuck it across the workshop. Hey Jesse. Hey Jesse. Come here. So we've been out and mic'd the end of the shaft, end of the crank, and we're looking for 9.4.7. So we're at 9.4.2. So one last cut, we should be there. I sped the lathe up, slowed the feed down, see if we can improve this surface finish a little. Bloody. So of course on the final pass it's going to start chattering, so I've switched out to a different insert, smaller radius, positive rake, and we'll try that again. Can't make it up, can you? So as you can hear, as always is the way, on the last pass it wants to start chattering. So I'm going to have to change out boring bar. I might try this one. And we just have to struggle on through. It's the last, you know, passing. It's just what happens. So I don't know if this one's going to be long enough. Might just get us there if we clamp it on the end. We are limited with tools and things we got around there, so got to use what we got. So 5 inches of stick out. We might be alright. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever run into this issue. Get that on centre. Obviously all our measurements and everything's DRO reading, all that sort of stuff's invalid now. So we might have to just do a little skim through, see if we can clean it up and go from there. Right, I got it to pull a chip. That's a decent finish. We just got to hope that there might be enough for a finish pass, or we're on size. So we go for 9490. That's reading 9495. So I think that's going to be close enough for what it is. Got a bit of an undercut to do here on the front now, little counter bore. So I'll get the measurements for that, and we'll fire that on. So the counter bore on the front here is 5" OD. So we'll put that in next. Right, so that should be all the operations done for that. That last one was just a witness line to know how far we got to come out for our splines. I will measure that, it's just a visual representation. So deburr this and we'll be able to get it out. Right, so there she goes, that's that. Oh. That's that portion of the job finished off. So that's it, just the splines left to do now. I haven't got anything to do that here, so that'll be a job going back up to JW's, just to put the last couple of splines in. You've just seen us do the counter bore. What a counter bore is, this is the top speed gear. And as you can see, this has got a spigot in the middle, and the counter bore will basically, so this will be on the engine, and when you're in high gear, your smaller gear will mate on that, and keep it located basically. And that should stop it rattling around, stop it ringing and rattling when this is not engaged to the drive gear. So that's what your counter bore is for, of course. So of course we still got our back plate to weld on. I'm going to wait, I'm going to hold off doing that until the splines are done so we can test fit it, just in case we've got to take anything out the bore. I want to be able to grab it, because that's where we've been grabbing it, on this small lip. So basically that's how we've been chucking it in the lathe, just on that small small lip there, so I don't want to stick the back plate on until we know it's going to fit. So we are cracking on, so we are making good progress on things now. We've got a lot of other parts and pieces and bits of the puzzle all coming together quite nicely at the minute. So anyway, that's all I got time for. I appreciate all the support on the channel, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.